Call of Duty players have forgotten how to have fun. And honestly, I think that's the real reason so many people hate this franchise now. Because every single year, no matter what COD releases, we hear the exact same things that I'm sure you've heard over 1,000 times. This is the worst COD ever, this franchise is dead, and COD's fallen off. And the funny part is, this happens regardless of whether the game is actually good or bad. People said it about Ghosts, people said it about Advanced Warfare and Infinite Warfare, you name it. And of course, people say it now with BO7 and even BO6 last year. So at some point, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently, I started realizing that maybe this conversation isn't only about the game anymore. Because if every COD ends up getting hated, eventually, maybe the problem isn't just Call of Duty. Maybe it's the way players play it, the way we think about it, our expectations regarding it, or maybe it's the fact that the majority of players have just simply completely changed. And as I'm sure you're quite aware of, this cycle literally never stops. Every single COD goes through the exact same process, and you already know how it goes. A new game comes out, everyone calls it trash, the internet spends the next year complaining about it, and then suddenly, a few years later, people start calling it underrated. Rinse and repeat. Even BO2, which people now treat like the greatest COD of all time, rightfully so, had tons of hate from certain players when it launched. People complain about the futuristic setting, the maps, the connection, and even the weapons. Literally anything from the game. I specifically have a vivid memory of my older neighbor telling me he returned the game because he didn't like it compared to the CODs before it, such as Modern Warfare 2. Then when Ghost came out and people said COD was officially finished, and now people have fond memories on it, and search in that game was amazing. And now the exact same is happening with the current COD, just like every other year. It's always this game is ruined, and the old games were better, and nobody has fun anymore. But as soon as a few years pass, people suddenly become nostalgic for the exact game they used to hate. And that's why I think this topic in conversation goes way deeper than just bad game design. Because if the community repeats the exact pattern every single year, then clearly something else is going on, which explains why this never ending cycle never ends. So for me, this raises a bigger question, which is what's actually changed? Because despite what people say online or what you might see, COD fundamentally still plays like COD. Even BO7 and BO6, which are faster paced. You still load into pubs, you still level up your weapons, you still build classes, and you still go for kill streaks. And at the end of the day, it's still a fast paced FPS shooter at its core. Now, obviously, yes, some things are different. Movement has evolved each year, SPMM changes how matches feel nowadays, and the game is more focused on engagement in playlists now. And I'm not denying any of that, as I feel like that evolution is natural and expected from a franchise as old as Call of Duty. At its core, the franchise hasn't changed enough to explain this level of burnout from the community, and honestly, I think that's because the biggest change wasn't the game itself. It has been with the players who grew up with COD and are still trying to hold on what their favorite escape was. So for me, I think one of the biggest problems with modern COD is that people don't really play it for fun anymore. They play it to complete things and almost treat it like their second job. They hop on the game to finish camos, to level up weapons, to unlock attachments, to complete the battle pass, and everything they have to do has to maximize the amount of XP they earn. And over time, that makes COD slowly stop feeling like a game where people just casually hop on to enjoy, and it makes it start to feel like they have to be productive while they're playing. And I know this isn't just a COD issue, it's in a lot of games nowadays, but I think it's still really relevant when it comes to Call of Duty. And that's because you see it everywhere. People will strictly only load into shipment or stakeout 24/7 playlists and play for 8 hours straight just to mindlessly grind challenges, and they are going to look up the fastest camo method videos before they touch the game, and they just that natural feeling of gaming is just gone. And these progression systems aren't necessarily bad for the game, as I feel like if you enjoy the game at its core, then these progression systems just give you more reasons to play. But if they're the sole reason you're playing the game, then you're obviously not going to enjoy it and you're going to be building resentment towards it. Because at that point, the gameplay itself becomes secondary. You're no longer hopping on because you genuinely enjoy playing COD, you're hopping on because your brain feels obligated to finish a checklist. And once that happens, burnout becomes inevitable because eventually you unlock that camo, you finish the battle pass, or you hit the rank that you wanted. And then suddenly you realize you don't actually want to play the game anymore. Once you reach that goal, you get more of a feeling of relief rather than feeling accomplished and still wanting to play the game. It's literally like that South Park meme where the guy is like, oh, we can finally play the game now. And the crazy part is, a lot of players will then blame the game for that feeling entirely, when honestly, part of it comes down to the way we choose to interact with the game. And to be fair, COD absolutely encourages this style of play with the playlists they push and all the engagement loops they include. But at the same time, players also choose it. Nobody's forcing people to spend their entire night running around shipment in hardcore. That's something the community has normalized. And yeah, I also don't think it's fair to act like modern COD is completely innocent here either. Because the reality is, this game does absolutely encourage this behavior, and everything about modern COD is built around engagement and retention. The constant battle pass progression, daily challenges, the limited time rewards, and obviously the 24/7 small map playlist, it's all designed for grinding. And even SBMM plays into this frustration too. A lot of players now feel like they can never truly relax while playing anymore because every match feels overly competitive. So instead of casually enjoying the game, people either sweat or just mindlessly grind progression systems. And again, I'm not saying modern COD is perfect with this video, that's not my point. The franchise absolutely has real issues that are worth criticizing. All I'm saying is that even if it was a perfect world and all these issues disappeared tomorrow, I still don't think everyone would suddenly love COD again. Because I think the issue is deeper than a lot of players really think, and they're really just trying to force themselves to recreate a feeling that they had many years ago when they used to play COD. And no amount of better maps, less SPMM, or faster progression is fully gonna fix that. And honestly, I think this is the part that a lot of people don't want to admit. I don't think most players actually miss old COD mechanics as much as they think they do. I think they miss how those games felt for them during that period of their life. They miss being younger. They miss getting home from school during the summer and playing with their friends for hours every night. They miss discovering online multiplayer for the first time. They miss when gaming felt simple and exciting instead of optimized and exhausting. And this also comes with having more obligations and limiting your time and wanting to maximize your own free time. Because back then, for players, COD wasn't competing with 10 years of expectations, nostalgia, burnout, and comparison. It was simply new and fun. And people still experience that if their first COD is BO7 or BO6. People still get that feeling because COD itself has not changed fundamentally. And for all these reasons, I feel like a lot of people now just confuse the nostalgia with the game's quality. And I'm not saying that the older games were bad. Obviously, they were amazing and incredibly important to the franchise as a whole, but nostalgia does change how we remember those experiences. People only remember the highlights. For me personally, it's those late night search and destroy games with your friend groups and you're interacting with randoms in the lobby. But for most people, when it comes to these older CODs, they usually don't remember all of the things that they would probably complain about today if those exact games were released now. Let's not forget all the cheesy stuff that was in games like BO2 or BO3. We see some similar things in BO7, which people despise, and the same would be true if those games were brought back today. And the older you get, the harder it becomes to recreate that feeling that we used to have when you played COD previously. And that's not because the game is now dead or the game is now objectively terrible. It has to do with the fact that majority of players have changed as people. As people, our interests have changed, our attention has changed, and our priorities have changed. And after playing the same franchise for 5, 10, or 15 years straight, burnout is naturally going to happen at some point. No game or even new COD can recreate that feeling of being 14 years old, discovering multiplayer games for the first time, and just hopping on with your boys. And I think a lot of players are unknowingly chasing that feeling every single year when a new COD drops. And the truth is, that feeling was never meant to last forever, and it's okay to accept it and not be bitter about it. It's much healthier to accept what happened and be open to experiencing new things versus the same old, same old. You may actually find that you enjoy modern COD more when you adopt this mindset versus expecting something that is impossible to be matched or recreated. And I think the best example I can think of is Modern Warfare 2019. Because whether you personally love this game or hate it, one thing is undeniable. It felt different and it wasn't really what COD used to be. The engine was new, the animations were on another level, the sound design was completely different from all previous CODs, and the pacing was slower and more tactical. The atmosphere felt heavier and more realistic, and just simpler things like reloading weapons or opening doors felt unfamiliar for COD at the time. And I honestly think that's why so many people became obsessed with this game despite all its flaws. Because for the first time in years, COD actually felt new again, and it wasn't just a regular COD formulaic game. It gave people a completely different experience from the classic formula that they had been playing for over a decade. And I think for me, that's really important because to me, it proves something. Players aren't only asking for classic COD back. Because if that were true, then Modern Warfare 2019 probably wouldn't have connected with so many people in the way it did. What people were really searching for, and I think are still searching for, is that feeling of rediscovering COD again. That excitement, that freshness, that feeling of hopping on and not fully knowing what to expect. And for a lot of players, Modern Warfare 2019 temporarily brought that feeling back. And for a lot of players, Modern Warfare 2019 temporarily brought that feeling back. Not because it was identical to old CODs, but because, if we're being honest, it's a totally different FPS shooter entirely. And I think this leads into the hardest truth for a lot of COD players that they need to accept. You don't have to force yourself to love Call of Duty forever. It's okay for your interests to change, and not enjoying COD anymore doesn't automatically mean the franchise is horrible or that multiplayer gaming is now all of a sudden dead. And it doesn't mean you're wrong for feeling disconnected from the franchise now. Sometimes people simply outgrow things, and I don't mean for that to be taken as a jab or taken in any disrespectful way at all. When you've played the same franchise consistently, eventually it's natural for some of that excitement to fade. And honestly, that's just life. Your hobbies change, your priorities change, and also the way you experience games are going to change as well. And a lot of players have been spending years trying to force themselves to reconnect with a version of COD that realistically doesn't exist anymore. Not because the developers ruined it or because the game has changed drastically, but because the players themselves have changed too. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with admitting that. You don't need to keep grinding a game that no longer genuinely makes you happy because it used to. I think for this topic, the healthiest thing you can really do is either enjoy COD casually for what it is, and if you do, fair play, grind your camos, do whatever you want in the game because you genuinely enjoy it. But if you don't, then I think the only answer is to simply move on from it. As without doing that, you just only become more frustrated with the game and your hate towards it will only grow and it'll just build resentment. Because at the end of the day, not every game is meant to stay a permanent part of your life forever. And by staying in that constant cycle of wanting something you can't even get, you're only going to be let down year after year. So to be clear with this video, I'm not saying COD is flawless. The franchise absolutely deserves criticism, and there are bad design decisions, and there are frustrating systems within the game each year. Every year, there are real issues with matchmaking, monetization, content quality, and just the overall burnout driven design that focuses more on retention than actually making an enjoyable experience. But I also think the community's relationship with the game has changed too. A lot of players aren't approaching COD the same way they did 10 years ago. Gaming today as a whole is just more optimized and more competitive than how it used to be. And after years of players constantly chasing that nostalgia, I think a lot of people have started blaming the game for feelings that honestly go way deeper than Call of Duty itself. And the hard truth I think people might have to realize is that people might not actually miss old COD, and it's really the person that they used to be when they would play it as a kid. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.